I would like to welcome a terrific panel we have with us today to discuss successful actions around energy efficiency and how to finance them. With us we have three excellent speakers, and I'm sure that it's a terrific, you'll see they're very lively. I don't want to give too much away. First we have Franz from ABB Europe, who's head of the EU Public Affairs. And Volker will present a study that ABB recently commissioned with the Economist Intelligence Unit, to see what industry thinks about energy efficiency. With us also we have Andreas Gürtler from the European Industrial Insulation Foundation, and Andreas is the director of EIIF. And he will be presenting us also minimizing energy losses in industrial processes from more of a business perspective. And last but certainly not least, we have Dorine Putman-Devilee, who is senior banker at the ASN Bank, in charge of institutional relations, and Dorine is also an ambassador to the ASN Bank and responsible also for the Energy Fund. And you can tell us the name of that because I don't know how to pronounce it. So Volker, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Julia, and hello. I already had a terrific day today. I learned a lot. It's actually very stimulating. I don't think I will be too complicated with my presentation, because basically I will just show you the answers to a couple of questions that we asked together with the Economist Intelligence Unit, the decision makers in industrial companies on energy efficiency investments. Before I do that though, I will tell a couple of words about who I actually am and why the hell we did that. If we go not to the first but to the second slide. Right. Okay. Well, I'm working with ABB, and ABB, in case you didn't know, is some people think we're Swiss, some people think we're Swedish. We're actually both and much more. We were formed in '88 by a merger of a Swiss and Swedish company. Our roots go back very far into the 19th century. Even though our head office is based in Switzerland, we are a truly global company with 150,000 employees all over the world. And the reason why we did this study was our customers are basically everybody that you could consider industry in the large sense. So it's the energy utilities, it's heavy and process industries, steel, oil and gas, food, etc. It's all the rail and maritime transport sectors. And we basically sell them, well, no, probably not everything, but a lot that can make their business processes more efficient, more productive, more automated. So we have a very simple business interest in those industrial customers investing in energy efficiency. So, therefore, we asked 317 senior executives, such as CFOs, so those that make decisions in industry and power sectors, about energy efficiency. We didn't do it ourselves. It was carried out by the Economist Intelligence Unit. About 50% were from the SMEs, 50% are large companies, and the areas covered are mainly Western Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific. This is the second time in 2013 that this survey was carried out. The first one was 2011, and the idea is to do it every 2 years so that eventually we can identify certain trends. So, to start with something very simple. Can you read this? No, you cannot read it. Can you read the second line? Because this is the gist of it. Basically, we asked them, will energy efficiency over the next 2 decades be a critical factor for manufacturers' profitability? Very simple question, and probably not a big surprise. A lot of the decision makers said yes, energy efficiency is and it will be critical for our profitability, more than 75%. So simple, but at least kind of reassuring. Energy efficiency has reached the boardrooms. Secondly, what are the major reasons for investing in energy efficiency? And that is also not surprising. 57% say it is the price or the cost of energy. Unfortunately, I cannot read all this, but this is the highest bar. Basically says the major reason why we should do energy efficiency investment is the cost of energy, or the expected rise in the cost of energy. What's also quite important is the third bar, which you cannot read either, but which says that 35% said energy efficient investments are important to improve the company's image. That might not be a huge number, but at least it's rising. Compared to 2011, it was 26%. Said, okay, energy efficiency is important to give our company a good image, and 2 years later it was already 35%. So, energy efficiency is in the boardroom, and the major reason seems to be money, and reputation seems to be on the rise. Okay. Now, however, the not so good news in a way, in this slide we asked what actual efficiency investments have you undertaken over the last 3 years? And in the first bars you have stuff like lighting systems, air conditioning, heating, so those that don't really touch the actual industrial processes, so to say. And the one which I circled in red says those are this is the percentage of companies that invested in plant and equipment in our factories, so motors, drives, etc. And this is just 38%. So what we and the economists deducted from that study is that the majority of actual investments in energy efficiency are about changing light bulbs and the easy stuff. But when it comes to the big investments that could or that intend to modify the actual production process, the business process, it gets much more complicated, and decision makers get much more hesitant. Why is that? And so we asked them, what are the main barriers to investment in industrial energy efficiency in your organization? And the number one reason for the number one barrier that was given as a reply was a lack of clear-cut financial case, whatever that means. And that's probably the gist of the whole survey, the lack of a clear-cut financial case in the perception of the decision makers in industrial companies for energy efficiency investments. And well, there was also qualitative surveys, there were longer interviews being done with decision makers. Yes, and basically it all comes back again to the payback time. And say, well, we have every month a raft of investment projects that we get, or that the CFO gets, and a decision has to be made on the limited amount of capital that's there. And it seems that it is a problem that energy efficiency investments don't have the required very quick payback time that would be needed for those investment projects to be chosen. And that's basically it. I promise you a very simple presentation. So as a resume, yes, industry thinks energy efficiency is a critical business factor, largely due to existing or expected higher energy cost, but the actual investments and process efficiency are lacking. So in the real process efficiency, largely to a lack of clear-cut financial case, which you could translate into quick payback. There's more to the survey, and I'd like to show just one more question that we asked them. Basically, well, we do have a lot of people from government here, and also my personal job in ABB is regulation. I'm doing public affairs. So I personally found the following slide quite interesting, that we also asked them, in your view and on balance, is industrial energy efficiency legislation in your country more of a benefit or more of a burden to your industry? And surprisingly, 64% said it's more of a benefit. Because that might maybe underline a bit the love-hate relationship that business has with legislation. I'm not saying that this is the free pass for legislators to say, okay, let's go ahead and legislate like crazy, but there seems to be a not so reluctant attitude in a significant number of companies when it comes to legislation encouraging energy efficiency investment. Thank you very much.
I do have a question for you. We're talking a lot about energy management systems and energy managers, and I didn't see that as part of the type of investment that a company could do towards being more energy efficient. Was it because the question was not asked, or is it because it's not valued or evaluated?
The question was asked, and there is a rising tendency of those companies in using energy management systems. But we did not explore it further. We just basically asked this one question, and yes, I mean, it seems to fall on fertile ground, so to say.
Our next speaker, Andreas, you will talk about the insulation industry, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks very much for inviting me. As it is quite late today, and I think all your brains are a little bit, let's say, blocked, I asked a friend of mine to come with me to entertain you at least for 3 minutes. So, Niels, if you can run the video.
All around the world, industry fails to use insulation properly. Insulation leads to wasted heat, energy, and money, and unnecessary CO2 emissions.
It's showtime.
The proper insulation of a typical power plant will reduce your insulation-related heat loss by up to 45%.
Your heat loss, give it to me, now.
And your investment in insulation will usually pay back in just 1 year.
Now, it's payback time.
Insulation will also reduce your CO2 emissions.
Hasta la vista, CO2. You are insulated, born to be good.
Pick it up, born to be good. We heard a lot of interesting outcome I think the biggest surprise for me is that the legislation is actually quite welcome with 64%. What I thought is not a big surprise to us is actually that the lack, let's say a general lack of awareness for energy efficiency measures is one of the major reasons why we still find large potentials out there, which are actually quite cost attractive. So also the demand for payback times. And we have to understand that industry is doing a lot to get more and more energy efficient, but we have to support and to help to bridge this lack of awareness and to show options, so-called low-hanging fruits, technologies which minimize energy loss or heat loss in industrial processes, offering, let's say, in general, energy efficiency offers for life cycle cost analysis, usually also production reduction cost option, but also to check for the first initial easy steps and easy potentials to start with. And I want to show you one technology, but I think this is industrial insulation, but please think it as somehow being an example for any other technology with a similar characteristic and a similar, let's say, approach for industry and option for industry to reduce energy consumption, and by doing that with increasing energy prices, first of all, increase the competitiveness and reduce the production cost. Okay, so we saw him. Who we are, I will make it very short. We're a non-profit foundation. We are European, but based between Lausanne and Geneva in Switzerland. If you're interested why we are there, just take one of the breaks and I'll give you the whole story. These are all our members, so we have more than 50 members. We represent actually global players as well as company size down to father and son. And we have been established to support industry by getting more energy efficient, using, as we call it, sustainable insulation systems. What I will talk about today, first of all, is when we started 5 years from today, well, February 2009, we said, we all know it, running through the plants, that there is large potential and that it is most probably very cost attractive. So it means offering short payback times for the investment needed. But we had this feeling, but we thought it's good to involve a professional partner to get a first idea how large the potential is. And we therefore asked Ecofis to study the potential at that time in the EU 27 industries, how large would the insulation potential be. And what they found out in the end is that the potential out there is 620 petajoules. Who knows how much is 620 petajoules in households? No one. So I'll tell you, 10 million. So it's quite something. So the equivalent is 10 million households. In return, if you would, if we manage to tap this potential, we can switch off 15 coal-fired power plants. This is not peanuts, this is not nothing, and it's highly cost attractive. I will show how. If we do so, we can reduce emissions in the European Union equivalent to the emissions of 18 million cars. I have to admit, those are not business cars, so 12,500 kilometers is something average between the housewife and, let's say, the sales representative. And what is even more interesting, sorry, I'm a runner, I need to do it like this. So what is even more interesting is what do 620 petajoules mean in the context of our 2020 targets? As you all know, we should increase the energy efficiency, we should reduce energy consumption by 20%. And to put it here, coming from the different figures, with the 620 petajoules, we reach almost 1%. And that means that if this gap, and I've heard we are between 16, 17%, that's most probably where we will be. The latest information from DG Energy, I heard it from Mr. Oettinger in Athens, was that we will most likely achieve 18, 19%. So we miss our energy efficiency target by 1%. And I hate to lose, to be honest. Let's go for this 1%. We are now in this Olympic environment here. If you come into and you're the fourth, you just missed the medal. And that's a very bad feeling. So let's go for the gold medal and achieve the 2020 goals. What has come up in the last days as a very important discussion, you've all read about it, Putin went to China, so he's also looking for other options to deliver his gas not only to Europe. So what does it mean on the energy security side to have 620 petajoules? And we talk about 12.5% of the gas imports the EU is importing from Russia, which we would not need anymore. And there's this figure 9 and 0.5%, which is actually the 460 petajoules, the figure up there, which I want to show you a little bit more in detail why we are talking about two different figures here. It's both for the cost attractiveness, but the 460 petajoules offer a very nice financial benefit to industry. But before I come to the financial figures, I want to show this slide very quickly that you see it's not only the insulation branch who knows this. It was years ago when Vattenfall commissioned McKinsey to study which technologies can help to abate a ton of CO2 and how much would it cost. And the easiest to do is insulation. And what you see in this graph is it's highly negative. So it saves money rather than it costs money. Of course, there have to be initial investments. So why is the potential still there? Why is there such a large lack of awareness? And one of the major reasons there is that if ABB designs a plant, the client is asking for his process needs. We have characteristics like, let's say, on a typical pipeline with a medium temperature inside the pipe of, let's say, 350 degrees Celsius, the surface should not be hotter than 50 or 60 degrees Celsius. So this is how you specify how much insulation should be put around. But energy efficiency has never been a topic in the past. So it was either the process need or safety, or both of them have to be fulfilled by the system. And as we know, industrial plants in Europe are rather aged. So we are still facing that there are outdated insulation specifications there. At that time, energy didn't cost very much. So it would not have been very, very efficient to insulate more from an energy or cost price perspective. But as energy prices go up like rocket, we know that this is a bigger issue in the future. And just to give you one nice idea how this looks like, comparing building standards with industrial standards, this is a German comparison here. You can see that we use the same insulation thickness for temperatures up to 600 degrees as we are using for the normal passive house, for the normal current building code. If you go to the passive house, it's about 5 times more. And that is ambient temperatures, let's say on average 10 degrees, and inside we want to have 21, 22, but we're using 5 times as much insulation here. And you can feel there must be something wrong. Another reason is, and this is the typical thing what we analyzed, there's a split of responsibilities between the one who is in charge to pay for the insulation and the one who is in charge for the energy cost. And this is why the study Volker presented is so important. We need to get into the boardrooms. And I can tell you we will do an informal session tomorrow, and we have also a presentation on Thursday where we go more into detail how we can tackle this issue of getting into boardrooms and how can we succeed. Because we have quite some experience here, and I can tell you as soon as we get into the boardroom, we get a project out of it and we start to save energy. But we have to get the hook into the top level management. Because the guy who's responsible for it is not going to pay for it. He will not have the benefit. So he has an increased budget and his colleague is getting the reward while he's getting fired. Okay, lack of awareness. This is one of my favorite slides. This is the image brochure of the ISO Energy Management Standard. Julia has been asking about the energy management standard and how important it is. So what they wanted to show on this picture, as we do in image brochures, a very nice and green industrial plant. And you can see on this picture the typical insulation mistakes. So uninsulated parts, this is in no idea an energy efficient insulation system. And we don't even talk about the insulation thickness inside or the material being used. You can just see there are uninsulated parts. There's bad maintenance, so there's the material already pouring out. You can imagine there's water pouring in. Let me check if this works. Yeah, it does. You can see here there will be water ingress, and you will have something like a thermal chimney almost getting the energy away. So this is actually where we are. We are below the line, and people are just not aware of the potential. And going back to the 460 petajoules, this is what Ecofys found out, and what was the biggest surprise for us. So we asked them to triple check, is this really true? But what they found out, and maybe this is very interesting for you to connect with, for an initial investment of, let's say, 1 billion euros, industry would save 3.5 billion every year. So we talk about a one-time investment of 1 billion. And in EU 27, of course this is a study, industry would earn back every year 3.5 billion euros. So if this is not cost attractive, if this is not a quick and rapid payback, what else could be attractive like this? But it is true, and this is why EIIF was established 5 years ago. We need to work on promoting this technology and any other technology coming with similar characteristics and figures. Okay, sorry. So what we want to do in general is, when we talk about energy efficiency, we don't talk about costs, because if it's done in a proper way, it will always pay back. It's efficiency, what we want to do. So it's an investment, but it's not a cost. It's going to pay itself back. Sometimes we need more years than just one, but if it's done in a proper way, energy efficiency will pay back. So to finalize, it's nice to do European studies, and we all know how to do studies, and I think Ecofys did a brilliant job here, but in the end what counts is to talk on maintenance manager level, plant manager level, about this refinery. How large is my savings potential? We've therefore established a so-called TIP check program, Technical Insulation Performance Check. It's an energy auditing tool based on the EN 16247 energy auditing standard, and it qualifies engineers how to do a thermal energy audit. And we will tell you more in the session on Thursday if you're interested to learn more about the details. Some key facts, but I have to hurry up to stay efficient. We'll make it very fast. We have identified in a chemical plant that some of the tanks had uninsulated rooftops. Nobody's building a house without insulation in the roof anymore. I hope so. And we found out that they can save about 500,000 euros, the payback time 2.4 months, just to give you one idea. Another one was a refinery tower in Italy. It was built up again with, let's say, double the insulation thickness, halving the energy loss, saving 75,000 euros per year. The payback time in this respect was a little bit longer because they needed a better fire protection system also. So the payback time was between 1 and 3 years. And also in Germany we found a project. We will go more into details in those 2 sessions about the background of these examples. But also there we found, with a very simple solution, savings of more than 40,000 euros, almost 50,000 euros, offering a payback of less than 3 months could be achieved, and the project was carried out. Coming back to the Ecofys job and the study, we were talking about little parts in plants. One was the tanks, the other one was one refinery tower, and this was just the elevator in one processing plant. And already there we found a savings potential of 630,000 euros and quite some megawatt hours, offering payback times by far less than 1 year if you combine it. So this is potential which needs to be tapped immediately. It will increase competitiveness. It will secure, also it will help to secure energy security in Europe. And first of all, it's offering European industry, we are European industry, as you saw with our 50 members, to do better business in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. did think about that joke about when I was watching your video yesterday, and hearing Professor Joachim talk about you shouldn't use payback time, but you should use internal rate of return, and thinking what it would be like. I don't even know how to use it, but it's IRR time, baby. Okay. A bit more seriously, I think our next presentation. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Our next presentation from Dorine is to talk about help. The bank doesn't understand me, or why is my project not liked? From a financial perspective, we've been working closely with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and to point to some numbers, for every dollar they invest in their energy efficiency program, they get a return of $1,000 on energy efficiency. That's what the client does, or that's what the investment, that's the energy efficiency investment return. So I think it's clearly there's certainly a win-win situation for everyone, and including for financial institutions in participating. Dorine, the floor is yours.
I was about to ask you, who are you? But I already know. I have one colleague here. Welcome, very nice. And of all the others here, who has been irritated very much by a bank? Oh, good. And who has ever really got a clear idea of what a banker is talking about when he talks about cash flow? Oh, even better. So, now I think that in order to give you an idea of what cash flow is and how important it is to the banker, I would like you to stand up and to make little rows between the chairs, so that each row has more or less the same amount of people. So the ones first sitting in the first rows, please go back, or the others come, and fill up the rows and stand up. Oh yes, you have already your hand in your pocket. That's exactly what I want. The ones near the aisle, can they all take one coin? Like 50 euro cents or whatever. Do you have a coin, all of you? No, I don't have. Otherwise you borrow one to the person in the aisle. Yeah. It's open, it's open. It's all right, yeah. Okay. Now this is a bit cheating, these small rows, so you have to make one row together with the persons behind you, so that we have as many people in one row, and you as well. Yeah, just like, okay, are you ready? Now I'm going to show you what is exactly cash flow. You put, when I say yes now, the coin somewhere in here, wiggle and do a bit until it comes out of your trousers, and then to the person next to you, and then the game is, who is the first row to have the coin received in those eyes? Okay, now. It's just one coin. Exactly, put it in there. So, let it go until it drops. Yeah, good.
Where'd it go? Hello.
Is there any coin already stuck?
And that's still mine, okay?
Anything stuck or lost? Yes, what? Where? In underpants? No? Where is it? Where is it? No cheating, huh? No cheating.
Well, you were on before.
Yes, are you the winner? Oh, great, great. We have one winner. How did you get the coins through your narrow trousers?
Oh, I shaked it a lot.
You shaked a lot, very good. All the coins received? Retrieved?
I gave you 50.
Good. So, now, what is actually cash flow about? It has to go as fast as you want it to go. And it should not get stuck. Really tell me, did it get stuck somewhere? Yes? Where?
That's Donna Square.
Oh, that is embarrassing. Okay, well, yes, of course. It gets stuck somewhere in a bra or in pants. I've seen it all. And that's exactly what happens also in the real economy. The cash flow, you want it to be predictable, but sometimes something happens. And then the money is stuck somewhere. And this is a disaster because the bank wants the money back, want to be paid for the interest, want to be repaid, and the money has to be reinvested in other important assets that the company might like to have. And the predictability of the cash flow is key. I'll come back to that later. So, help, the bank doesn't understand me. Who has ever tried to get a beautiful project financed by a bank and did not find a banker willing to invest? 1, 2, 3. Was it really a good project? Yes? No. I looked at the survey of The Economist, and wasn't it striking that the 2 reasons for trouble were, 1, the board people didn't see really the financial benefits, and second, there were no funds available. Why? If it is clear what the profits are and when they will come, then you do have a good project. And then there is a bank who wants to help you. I hope our bank would. I hope. So why do they not want your project? And that is because of the risks involved. And the payback time, yes, there's a lot of misuse of that word. And I tell you that's not that important. I give you a small anecdote. There was a farmer in the Netherlands, and he went to a famous bank that is really specialized in farming in the Netherlands. It's a cooperative bank. And the farmer said to the bank, I would like to have a windmill in my garden. And I need 1.2 million euros. Can I get that money? And the account manager took a booklet out of his drawer and said, how much is your milk quote? How much have you already borrowed from the bank? Oh good, there is 50,000 euro left that you can borrow. And the farmer said, no, I need 1.2 million euro. No, that's out of the order, because this is how we look at your risk, and we can afford to take more risk. Then the same farmer came to me. I don't know anything about farming. And he said, can I get the 1.2 million euros? And I said, okay. Where's the forecast of the wind that is blowing in your area? Oh, here it is. For how much can you sell the energy to the companies? Oh, so much. Okay, I will deduct both by 20%. And let me look at the projected cash flow. Oh, you are able to pay me back in time. You can get a loan for 10 years. And of course you have to ensure that the maintenance is well organized, there is a bonus, malus, and so on. And I trusted the future cash flow. And that's why that was a good project for me. And it was not a good project for the other bank, who didn't look at the cash flow, but looked at the risks, and looked at the assets, and looked at the usual procedures at the bank. Now, of course, financing a windmill is very easy once you know the situation. And in your project, you might have much more difficult situations. Not if I think you have a project in which there is 4 months or 2 years needed in order to get your money back. I don't dare to use these difficult terms of IRR, because most of you are not economists, and for you it's probably easier to understand that it has to be profitable, right? Just try to show you what might match and what might not. In your project you might have proven technology. We've done it for years and years. Isolate insulation is most of the time proven technology, unless you have very new special materials, but we understand the concept. Then we have rather new technology, and we have inventions. Nobody really knows whether it's going to work or not, but let's hope it does work. Probably it does so in a small prototype, but you never know how it's going to work out in a larger implementation. Now, can you go to the bank? Can you get equity? And where should you go? So, proven technology, does that match with the bank or with private equity? What do you think?
The bank.
The bank. Why?
Because banks, like you say, they want it to be sure.
Yes.
They to be sure.
Very dull people, bankers. They don't want anything unforeseen. They want to be sure what happens. Okay, the bank. Right. Now, for the newer technology. Newer.
It probably depends on the greenness, if you have green loans, for example.
Yeah, and why does that depend on maybe green loans? Because the account managers in those specialized banks or funds, they have already experience. So these are the ones, compared to me, financing the windmill. And so there can be a match. And now the unproven concepts. Equity, yes. And why equity?
There's more risk associated.
Yeah, but you can also win more. Because with something that has not yet been proven, it might also be possible that it is a big hit. And that's what a private equity investor is looking for. If a private private equity investor has 10 projects, he or she knows that 7 will be just bad. And then maybe 2 might be so-so. And they hope that 1 is the big hit. I just make it a little bit more simple, but that's what's going to be expected. Now, if we look at the proven technology and the large-scale implementation, like wind offshore or wind on land, we all do understand this. Is this a matter of bank loans, or maybe do you also need private equity or venture capital? What do you think? There's never ever a bank that will do everything by itself. I did, in 10 years ago, maybe 98% bank loan for a windmill. But if we are going offshore, the risks are higher. And we do need another kind of money to be mixed with our money. So we can provide loans, but we also need equity. For smaller projects and innovative legal constructions, for instance, imagine that there would be a company that says, for 500 industry plants, I'm going to invest in the isolation, I'm going to finance it, and the companies are paying me for that particular service, like an energy service company, but now an insulation service company, why not? For 2 or 3 years, a certain amount of money. Then it is not on the balance sheet of the different companies. The company that does the installation works with, for that company, proven technology and reaches a larger scale. Now, maybe the banks are willing, our bank would, invest in those projects. You need an intermediary that can implement. Now, the unproven concepts, you may make a difference between existing companies and startups. What about the startups with real good ideas that have not yet been proven? There's no bank that will help you out. In an existing business, maybe if there is enough let's say, space on the balance sheet of that business for the bank to feel comfortable, the bank might finance such an initiative. The good thing of energy saving projects is that there is always a cash flow that would have been there because they had to pay Vattenfall or whichever energy company for the energy to be used in the future, and that bill is going to be lower. And for that part that the savings represents, proper banks that look into the cash flow might be willing to help out and finance. Now, equity, for standard proven technology, the banks might require something between 10 and 40% equity and 90 or 6 to 60% bank loans. But now if we look into projects that are newer or smaller or that have innovative new legal constructions that we have not much experience with, the banks are more prudent. So they will say we will do between 20 and 50%. And between 80 and 50%, the money must come from the own capital from the company or a third party, a private investor. And if you look into the unproven concepts, it is 100% that you need from a private equity investor. And to know your project in the terms of the bank can predict whether you have a proper strategy in talking with the bank. So, most of the projects coming to our office show a mismatch in the perception of the one who is presenting the project and the possibility that we as a bank have. And this discrepancy cannot be solved. You can't do more as a bank than what I just showed you. So this is what is left for you as project managers or businesses. These are the possibilities. And look into the red. The banks will not do more than that. Now, have a look at other funds, because some banks manage funds that are, for instance, government funds. We at ASN Bank is the largest green bank in the Netherlands. We manage a fund by the province of Overijssel. It is an energy fund. And the interesting thing is that money should come back to the province of Overijssel for 100% and should have 2% dividend each year. Now I ask you, what is the difference between the bank and the fund that we manage for the province? Can we take risks? The money has to come back 100%. It's a tricky business to take risks. So what we have done is we've split up that fund into a small part that goes into equity and a larger part that goes into loans. And if projects come to us and they do not have a potential for making a lot of money, say maybe 20 to 30% returns every year, we cannot accept them in the risky part. So then we look at the banking part, and if they don't have a predictable cash flow, then we can also not help them. It might be a little bit depressing if I present it such to you, but I tell you, once the designers of the projects understand very well what the bankers can do, we will find each other. In the government, often there is an idea that if you bring money together as a government, that you can solve the problem of the unproven concepts, that you can solve the problems of the newer technology, and that you can solve the problems of those companies that do have a bad balance sheet and do not get the trust of the bank. And this can only be the matter if these funds are designed such that they can allow for reusing the money in a more or less revolving way, but after 25 or 30 years, and after the money has been used and reused, it is allowed that there is less money at the end than there was at the beginning. That kind of money is risk money for projects that do not have the potential of the very high return, but are worthwhile trying. What kind of funds do we have? I know that the European Union has several initiatives. I can't mention all of them to you. And the only way that these funds are going to be a success is when we do not only have carrots, but also sticks. In the Netherlands, we do have a fund. ASN Bank and Rabobank have funded this fund. It was at the request of our government. 50% is government money, 50% comes from the banks. And it is meant to do energy-saving investments in housing. And the conditions are very good. You don't have to see a notary, there is no mortgage, there is a large possibility of repayment time. So if you want to have the money with a loan period of 10 years, it's possible, 15 years is possible, the interest rate is not exaggeratedly high, and it is not yet a success. And you know why? I think that is because there's no law that says that we have to do all the efforts that are easy for us to do. We do have a law in the Netherlands, it's the environmental law that says all businesses that have premises that use more than 50,000 kilowatt hour a year have the obligation to invest when they get their money back in less than 5 years' time. That's the law, already for years in the Netherlands. Do you think it works? Not at all. And why? Because there is no government official being paid to check out the businesses, whether they do it or not. And there is no budget available to sanction. And as long as that is the case, nothing will happen. So I agree very much with the outcome from the economists that governments need not only to make legislation, but also to check it out so that we really get a level playing field. The level playing field is important. The businesses are willing to apply, to comply with the law. That is not the problem. And it is so profitable that you really cannot understand why we don't do it. We from the banks, we are willing to finance projects, and I must be honest, as from €1 million project finance can do improvements in energy saving for a bit more or less than a lot less than €1 million. How to find a solution for this tailor-made project finance for companies that are not complicated for the banks and that are profitable for the companies. This is a big challenge, and I think that we need intermediaries that can bring together the initiatives so that they become bankable for us, bankers, that they are large enough to compensate for all the hours that we have to put into these financing deals, because you need lawyers, you need to design it properly, but it is possible. So my challenge to the audience is that the government people amongst you realize that you need to design exactly the proper funds that match with the banks, that the companies need to to go into the boardrooms, indeed, and to convince at the highest level that you should not leave opportunities out that are so profitable, and to go to the bank with the proper people speaking the proper language, with the proper ideas of what matches and what does not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a terrific presentation, and I must say I learned a lot, so thank you. Speaking of the coin, I'm still looking for that €1 coin with the Spanish that comes from Spain, and it's actually for Neil. So if you do have the coin €1 that with the stamp from Spain, Niels would much appreciate it. Following on this conversation, there will be on Thursday a financing workshop where we can have more discussion on the specific issues relating to financing energy efficiency. But I'd like to open the floor for questions.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting presentations. Volker and well, to a certain extent, Andreas, when you're talking about energy efficiency retrofits in plant, the one thing I'm missing, Volker, is the perceived risk of doing it. I mean, one thing is installation, that's a passive thing to do, but if you have a complicated chemical process, if you have and also, even though it defies logic, the older the plant is, maybe the more resistance there is to touch it because it's still working. Two smacks of a hammer and a kiss, and it's still working. So have you any measure of the actual perceived risk, also from the plant manager's point of view? I mean, the last guy in our plant we want to get near our production are the finance people. They have great ideas, but we end up with a plant that stops for a week. So I think you need to put that, or have you done that? I don't know.
Perhaps I can take just a few questions actually, so that no one gets no time to ask the questions, and then I'll give.
Edwin Cornelius of Vito. I have a question to Volne and also to Dorine. My question to you, Volne, is, of course, first of all, thank you also for the presentations. My question to you, Volne, is, okay, we are all quite relieved to see that industry welcomes, 2/3 of industry welcomes legislation. But what kind of legislation would the industry want to have? And my question to you, Dorine, is a good fund to energy efficiency, could it be a good substitute to subsidies from government?
Well, on the first question, I can basically just say no, the survey has not, and yes, we should. Probably should ask much more people along the decision-making chain in the company. And yeah, I'll take it up. Well, on the second one, to paraphrase the general message of the survey is basically, we're here in a national sports center. You could maybe liken energy efficiency legislation to this coach that wakes you up at 6 o'clock in the morning, that you hate, but when you've done the sports that you're supposed to do, you're better off. And so this is my interpretation of the survey, that as long as it's energy efficiency legislation that makes you do the things that will have a benefit for you, at least in the longer term, but it's good. And I would say what we heard yesterday in the plenary about the sectoral efficiency agreements with industrial sectors, that for me seems to be the kind of legislation that qualifies for this kind of condition.
Oops. Yeah. So going back to the first question, but then I think we can merge it into the second one too. I think what we have to establish, and that's true for all companies, to do investments into the core business is business as usual. So let's say if you need to buy a new generator, or let's take the Coca-Cola example, when they say somehow Coca-Cola Light is not so fashionable anymore, it has become a girl's drink, but people are getting sensitive of eating, drinking too much sugar. Should we produce something for the male? And then they make a risk analysis. Is there a market for something like Coke Zero? Let's say, what is the investment, what is the risk, and what is the added value? And they will, challenge it, meet some banks, find out, do some studies, and then they start the production. So this is the typical way of what is the investment needed, what is my risk, and what is the added value. And if this is in all a positive result, they will most probably decide we do it. We have to get there for energy efficiency investments. And they are always left beside because they're not really linked to the core business. In one of our tip checks, we investigated savings potentials in breweries. And one of the first questions was, how much energy do you need to produce 1 gallon of beer? They knew it. So we said, the next question was, do you know where you lose it? And of course they didn't. So we need to make investment decisions for energy efficiency technologies. We need to integrate them into the typical investment process. Also what was said from, let's say, the banking perspective, to make everyone understand how to tap this potential, why this is a beneficial investment. And there's no tradition. So there is no experience and there's no tradition. How can we integrate these decisions into our, let's say, business as usual? And then going back to also what was in your question, that means also how can we make energy efficiency investments a priority? So if you're a professional company and someone is telling you, if you put these 100,000 euros into, let's say, producing, let's stick to the beer, to produce 10 gallons more beer every year, which would make a return of, if you earn 20% of every gallon sold, this will increase our return. Everybody would go for it, because it's closely linked to the business. But if you tell them, invest the same 100,000 euros into energy efficiency, and it will reduce your energy bill, let's say, significantly by 100,000 euros, it's a much more difficult decision because it's not increasing the production. It's not in the typical system how we understand, and our own members do it the same way, producing insulation material. When you invest money, the first challenge you do is you check, is this enlarging my production capacity, and do I have a market to sell more than I sell today? Because this is the typical way on how you make revenues. With energy efficiency, we look a little bit backwards. So we say, if I invest 100,000 euros, I will reduce my production cost by 200,000 euros. Very smart, but not our tradition. I need a beer.
I can also add to that a couple of months ago in the Netherlands there was a study amongst all the hospitals and other care institutions. And without any investments, actually, really, without investments, it was possible to save 12 to 15% on energy. And still there was no reaction. And that was because the scarce management time that people do have was not seen as to be used for energy saving. And why not? On the budget of, for instance, 1 billion a year, the energy component was maybe 5%. And although there was 12 to 15% free money waiting just to be used, then still it was such a minor aspect in the core business. That was why it didn't come up. And if we would have had the law being enforced, then all these institutions had already changed a lot. I'll go to the question of the subsidies instead of funds, or funds instead of subsidies. Also, this is a matter of matching. I believe that subsidies for implementation to roll out on a large scale what we already know as proven technology. Take, for instance, the solar panels. The subsidies have done very bad things, I think, to the sector. Because once a subsidy is a success, it is a failure. The government has only a limited amount of money. And once everybody wants that subsidy, then they have to turn the tap, because otherwise you would go bankrupt. And the industry cannot grow in a sound way with these subsidies. So subsidies, in my opinion, are needed for unproven technologies. The very first steps in new technologies, and not for implementation. So even funds, if you look at funds, if you make money available for proven technology with a predictable cash flow and a perfect profit in it, the question is whether you still need special funds if they have not a small subsidy element in it. Otherwise you could as well go to the bank. Now that subsidy element in the funds is that the funds might decrease over years in volume. So a subsidy as a premium or a bonus is a different subsidy from a subsidy in the conditions of a fund. That distinction we should make.
I actually had a question, which seems to me, in my past job, it was a lot about best practice sharing, and from a technical perspective, government policy best practices or programs, very easy to understand, and people are very willing to share that type of information. We also looked at financial mechanisms that are more effective for industrial energy efficiency. But what we were most requested in countries like China is, give me ideas of projects that work, and give me a good or clear idea of payback. My question is, there's a competitive edge, of course, to not disclosing some of the projects that you've done, and because it's a competitive advantage compared to your competitors. Now, a lot of these investments that banks have been lending to, or the different types of projects that banks have been lending to, the bank has the internal knowledge of a project that has worked and what has been the returns. But, and perhaps this is a misperception, but there's not much sharing of information between banks, and even between banks and ESCOs, or between companies, so that, after all, there could be a public good associated with the fact that we're saving greenhouse gas emissions. So my question to you is, do you have some sort of proposal on where to create some sort of space where that information and that best practice knowledge could be shared? Or is it because it's too much of a competitive issue not?
Yeah. We signed earlier this year the National Energy Accord, an agreement. And the Netherlands, the Dutch Bankers Association, has a Green Council. I'm a member of that council, and the members of the Green Council have agreed that we will make available our knowledge from our specialized account managers in energy saving or energy producing, renewable energy producing projects with other banks. And for that, we have made time available and knowledge. And the Dutch RVO, which is an agency financed by the government to stimulate sustainable development and other things, they make available a secretary, and this is already up and running now, and we have decided to start with what do we call that? heat projects, so to use to make use of I do not know the word. Anyhow, the heat in the earth. Yes, that's what it is. Geothermal project, which is a very specialized field of financing, and so one of our members is now writing a scenario for other bankers, what to do, what not to do, how to finance, what are the ticking points that you have to look at. That's the first project. The second project will be local initiative energy companies, which is also really a very special business. And so we will grow in the coming years to share the knowledge that we, the front-running green banks and also the green account managers in other banks have developed.
This is a very nice example, but of course in the complex industrial world, what we see is that the competition is a big issue. So we all know the Energy Efficiency Directive should be implemented by all member states in June. It doesn't look as if they are all ready. Most of them are not. But then next year in June, there is an obligation to carry out energy audits every 4 years for the large energy consumers. And we see the tendency that most companies will most probably implement energy management systems, which is also good, rather than accepting an internal energy auditor to lead the project. Because if you know everything about the energy consumption in an industrial process, you almost know the Coca-Cola recipe. So you know everything about it. And just imagine, one day you're at the Shell refinery, next day you go to Total with all the knowledge and the energy audit you just did there. And you tell everything to Total how they do it at Shell. Unthinkable. It's impossible. So we think there is a tendency that the most large companies will install energy management systems, and if you can prove that you have that, let's say ISO 50001, you don't have the obligation to carry out energy audits every 4 years, but of course energy audits should be part of your energy management system. But there is a big issue for how to share best practice. I think for our simple technology that's rather easy, but let's say when it comes to chemical processes, and we had that before, and I think you touched it also, so let's repeat to that a little bit more in detail. Of course, the biggest fear is, let's take the aspirin plus C production. So there is a pharmaceutical at the end of the process and it works very well. If you change a little thing in the process, it might be that the medicament at the end doesn't work anymore. So you lose a hell of a time and money if you change a simple thing. So it's very complex. And there are many things. What we identify is actually that we need a top management approach to, in general, integrate investment decisions in energy efficiency actions into the main core business. Then they should install an energy manager, an internal energy manager. He's the one to know the secret about the recipe, about the entire energy consumption of the company, and he should, of course, stay highly confidential and internal. And then if he gets his own budget to carry out projects, this is where we are the most successful with TipCheck. So if there's an energy manager, he has the budget to pay for the actions. He has the internal understanding of this process. He can decide where we can improve the situation and the production and where we better don't do it because the risk is too big. But I think this is really crucial.
Thank you for your presentation, Dario Di Santo from FIRA Italy. I have a question from Dorine about this fact. In Italy, some banks are trying to finance in a way like project financing projects between some 100,000 euros to some millions of euros without a special purpose vehicle, but considering that the energy saving cash flow can repay the debt, the loan from the bank. They face two main risks in the industrial sector: the fact that the company can reduce its production due to the economic crisis, and in the public sector the possibility that the public administration won't pay on time. So for this reason, in fact, even if they are possibilistic to give loans, they ask for guarantees like, for example, guarantee bonds or bank guarantees. In your opinion, a guarantee fund for the government, or even private horizon with, for example, a bond action, can reduce or can overcome this barrier?
I know that the problem, even for instance, the energy price, we never know whether it is really true that the price is going to go up. It might also go down, and then a lot of our projects will have trouble and will have to enlarge their payback time to the bank. If there is a guarantee from the government, you need a high leverage, otherwise it's of no use. What we know in the Netherlands, there is a guarantee. It's not really a fund, it's virtual. So it is in the budget of the government, but it is also not there. The companies that need but business finance, and that do have in the eyes of the bank not enough comfort, they may make use of a special guarantee in the Netherlands. And what they do have to do is to pay a small bonus, a premium to the government, in order to keep that virtual fund alive. So this is how it works. And the banks, in case there is a failure, will get 90% of the unsecured loan, that part that has been unsecured, defined as unsecured at the very moment that they disbursed, back from the government, if they can prove that the account manager has done everything that is possible to help the company fulfill its duties, and that at the very initial moment the total analysis and all the knowledge that was available by that time was okay. If you do have such a vehicle, such a guaranteed vehicle, it might be possible for banks to use that vehicle. In the Netherlands, we do have another vehicle, which is the Dutch National Guarantee Scheme for mortgage loans. And all people who buy a house of less than, I think, 340,000 euro, they can get this guarantee from this guarantee fund. And in case they have to sell their house and the mortgage loan is underwater, then this fund will compensate for the debt that is left after sale. These schemes work as long as the leverage is large, as long as the premium you have to pay for it is low, and as long as it is predictable how often you will get a failure. In business, this is also possible. And certainly, if we know the energy business and we do have a specialized fund that is working in this particular field, it is possible to disburse loans and to make use of a guarantee fund. But nowadays, with the new accounting policies and rules, a guarantee is as heavy on your balance sheet as a loan. And many local communities who previously had different guarantee schemes are now confronted with the fact that if they open their books, that all the guarantees that they have outstanding count as if they are 100% risks. And so that reduces also the previous large leverage that was possible. So we are now in a period of transition, and I do not have a clear answer of what would be the best solution, but I certainly believe that these guarantee schemes with high leverage can still help projects to be financed. You said you have projects between 100,000 and several million. The big problem is those projects smaller than $1 million. Most banks do not even do project finance under 5 million. In the Netherlands there are several banks who do project finance under 1 million, like our bank. But the tricky thing is those very small projects between 100,000 euro and €1 million.
Unfortunately, energy efficiency is mainly.
Exactly, and that's why you need these special purpose vehicles or these companies in between.
Actually, that reminded me of, in terms of sharing best practices and experience, our speaker this morning from the European Commission, Andreas, asked me if you have any papers on how, or case studies on how companies have managed to reduce their energy costs while energy prices have continued to increase. I think the Commission is very interested in using those examples as part of their next survey. I would like to remind you again then on Thursday we can continue this discussion about financing energy efficiency in the morning. And I would like to thank you, and please join me in thanking the panel speakers today. Thank you. And I now invite you to the cocktail, the drinks behind.